Hi, guys. Welcome back to Enlightened Awakening, episode number 10. Today, I have Indra Rinzler on the show. Indra is a spiritual seeker, a healer who has traveled the world spreading messages of light and love, and he also does many kinds of readings. Welcome, Indra.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's early here in India. I'm hoping I'm enlightened. I'm definitely awakening.
Yeah. Yeah, you're all the way in India. So it's morning for you, and what is that, like a 12-hour difference or something?
It's actually we're on the half hour, so it's actually from you Central Time, 12 and a half hours. I like to say that the same time is halfway between Chicago and Denver because
Ah,
we're on the half hour.
yeah.
Not
Wow.
everybody, not everybody in the world works on the hour. Nepal works on the 15 minutes.
Wow. This I did not know. I'm learning all kinds of stuff. Wow. Okay.
There's many,
Um,
there's many ways to be. There's many ways to live, in America we kind of think that there's one size fits all, and that's not really the way that it is.
right. We need to broaden our horizons, you know?
Yeah, I remember years ago there was a stat that 4% of the Americans had passports. A very
Right.
small
That's not,
percentage because the
yeah.
rest of the world travels like crazy.
Yeah. Like we don't go travel that often, do we? Yeah, that's wild.
Well, there is
Um,
a group that does. I mean, there are people that do, but most of it is most of it they don't get around. They don't travel the world. But I've been lucky enough to. Uh, I started traveling seriously 25 years ago, and have had the opportunity to be in 56 countries, and um, I've learned to. We go through borders where we have to show our passport, but the fact is that the people on both sides are the same.
right,
And so
right.
it's just a human condition to think that there's a difference. But the fact is that it really, the people on one side and the people on the other, they're really the same. It doesn't really matter where we go.
Right. How many, I mean, what places have you been to? Can you name some of them? You said 56 countries. I don't want
Well,
you to name all 56, but
I've been all over Southeast Asia. I've been to Guatemala and Peru, and I was a trader for 12 years. I bought uh, handcrafted items and spiritual items and sold them in the U.S. And I bought in 22 different countries. So I was in I was in Peru and Guatemala and uh, Ecuador. I was trying to think of and then in Morocco, Ethiopia, Egypt, Turkey, Romania, Hungary, Poland, most of Europe, and then Southeast Asia. I've been to Mongolia, which was like a big one. All over Southeast Asia, China a few times. India almost every year, Bali, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam quite a few times.
wow.
Yeah,
Do you know where any of your past lives were? What areas? What countries?
no, I don't really focus on past lives so much. I feel like my thing is more to get people into this moment.
Yeah.
This right here, right now. That it's interesting that I got knifed 8 lifetimes ago, but what am I going to do about that right here, right now? And so that isn't something that I personally focus on.
Gotcha. It might be fun to know. So, but okay, so what kind of led you on this path to spiritual enlightenment? Have you kind of like been like that your whole life, or were there a series of events that kind of led you to?
Well, I think it's both. I think that I've been on the spiritual path. I started the spiritual path in the early '70s, so it's more than 50 years ago. And I think there were life events, but there wasn't a particular event. I think it was I don't remember what I said back then, but it was sort of like wanting to find happiness, wanting to find myself,
You look
trying to
great.
find joy. Well, thank
You,
you.
you look great.
Uh,
I mean,
I think it was something like that. And when I moved to California, I started going to metaphysical bookstores, which of course at that time I'd never heard of before, and started buying books and studying them. And that's how it began. And then it kind of it was like the poodle that caught my pant leg, and then it kind of then it kind of caught my knee, and then it kind of kept moving up, and I went deeper and deeper into it. I lived in a spiritual community dedicated to an Indian guru for 20 years in California, and I left that in '99, and that's when I started traveling the world.
wow. How many times have you been to India? Do you go there regularly?
I've been here almost every year since '99, except for COVID. I can't tell you how
Oh,
many times, but 20 times maybe. I was here in '86
nice. Is your
before
favorite place?
this. Um, I don't know about favorite, but I would say that it's a place. You were talking about past lives. That my experience when I first got here was more of a remembrance, not a particular. Oh, I remember this town or this place, but more of a remembrance of a place within me that there was
Mm,
a light that came, and I don't mean I saw light, but I mean a lightness that came. There was a feeling of
mm,
home, of a remembrance of this place, but not of any particular places, but just of a spirit. Yeah, just a
feels
feeling that I can't even
familiar.
really put some sort of familiarity that seemed very natural. I guess it's a little bit like you in modern vernacular. You kind of find your family,
Hmm.
and it was kind of a pace, and kind of, even though India is so chaotic, that there was a familiarity to it, like it was my family. Again, not any one person that was my brother. I
Hmm.
don't mean it that way, but sort of a familiarity that felt comfortable. And of course, the problem is when you go back, it's very difficult, and you have to learn to make them the same. That whether you're here or whether I'm there, meaning in the U.S., it's
Hmm.
really the same for me anymore, and it didn't happen that way. It takes 5 to 10 years to be able to, because, and maybe this is of interest to people. When I first came here, when I went back, I felt like I had been, kind of here. I'm here and I was here, and I had to learn to bridge that gap. Is that
Right.
clear? That I
Yeah.
had, and you can call this out here. If I do this, you can't really see that, the distance, but that it was a higher consciousness. It was a higher vibration. It was a feeling of maybe you'd say that permanent smile on your face, and like you won
Yeah.
the lottery, and you have this permanent smile on your face, and what's going on? Oh, nothing. So you have to learn to kind of, and then you go back and it's like, oh my God, I'm poor again. It's not about rich or poor. I'm just using that as an analogy, but the idea is that you go back and say, whoa, where did it go? The bubble burst,
Yeah.
like the ayahuasca trip, or whatever. It's like or vacation. Like you go to the beach or the mountains for a week, and then you come back. It's like, oh my God, here I am back again. And you have to learn to find that joy where you're at, and not in your experiences.
Gotcha. Um, so tell us about some of your readings. You have several different kinds of readings.
Yes, I started with astrology in these metaphysical bookstores. I started buying astrology books, um, again, more than 50 years ago. And so I studied it really intently for 3 or 4 years. And I got to a place where, of course, this was before internet, and I was then living on 80 acres in Oregon in the country. And so there weren't any bookstores nearby, and you couldn't just Google something. And so I got to a place where I didn't really know how to go any further with the studies. And then uh, in the 90s, again, living in an Indian community of Vedic astrology started coming up. And so I started getting into Vedic astrology. And in 99, it was suggested to me that I would enjoy learning about the Enneagram of personality. And so I went to a weekend workshop. And during that weekend, in describing the Enneagram, which I had no knowledge of before, had never heard of it, I realized that there was a connection between the two. And I was lucky enough to find, a few months later, I found perhaps the only person in the whole world who knew a system of how Enneagram and Vedic astrology worked together, that you could see the Enneagram, the nine points, 9 personality points, and you could see them in the chart. And I found this incredibly interesting, and I am now, one of the world's only proponents. And I think it's incredibly valuable. And I've learned to not worry about the fact that if other people don't see it, that's not on me. That's I don't really care. It brings me joy, and so I developed the readings, using Enneagram, and then doing Vedic astrology, and then doing them together. And then over the years, other kinds of readings have appeared. Do you want me to go through those a little bit?
Sure. I have them here. Um, the first one is like a full life reading.
So yeah, so the full life reading is that we go through your Enneagram. And maybe I should go into more depth with this. So the Enneagram is that there are Enneagram. The term means 9-sided figure in Greek. The teachings had nothing to do with Greece, are Greek, but the term, the name of it, is from Greece, and it's 9-sided figure, and it's a combination of 3 geometric shapes that combine to make 9 points, and you can put anything at the points. It was in the late 60s, where a South American man put personalities at the points. And so there are 9 personality patterns. One of them is at our core, and there are only 9. And I believe that they're not just personality styles, but that these are the 9 personality points, and they help to unwind the 5,000 years of Judeo-Christian tradition, that all of the conditioning that has been passed down from generation to generation has culminated in the low sides of these stories. Uh, and they give us our core triggers. They help us to know what our gifts are. And by understanding your core point, the whole patterning is incredible. That the from person to person who has the same type, there are an incredible amount of similarities. And by understanding, which is true with almost every part of the spiritual process, is that spiritual growth is by understanding the teachings, the healing is in the understanding. In other words, if you're not to say that this is part of it, but the word rude comes up, and not to say that you're rude, but if you're rude, if you're being rude and somebody says you're being rude and you say, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I'll
Right.
stop now that you've shown me, okay, I won't do that anymore. So by understanding your own patterning, um, there already is the ability to be able to let go of your stories, and that is the idea, is to let go of the stories, to live in the moment, to not be patterned, to not be, like you talk about childhood patterning, that you learned, that your parents didn't, again, not you, but just a typical, that your parents didn't respect your abilities. And so you're a 40-year-old who has low self-esteem because you don't respect your abilities. But when you realize that that's your parents' story, it's not your story,
Right.
then when you have skills and abilities, then you learn to drop these stories. And so this is what the Enneagram does. It gives you your core triggers. So then the Vedic astrology, which is the astrology, is the strengths and weaknesses of your chart, the strengths and weaknesses of your abilities, the debilitated planets, the weak planets, the planets that have difficulties based on the sign that they're in. Maybe they're cuspy or retrograde. Cuspy means that at the edge of the of the house. These create a feeling of deficiency within ourselves. So the third modality, that the life reading has three modalities, and the third modality is something that I've decided to call, that I call the Wheel of Totality. And this was a teaching that was given to me about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. And it talks about, in an astrology reading, we talk about the houses that have planets. It's all about your planets and the houses that contain planets. But all houses contain awareness. And if you don't have a planet there, then it's a blind spot or a place of ignorance or deficiency.
Ooh.
And that we don't start working on these until we're 50. Why is that? Because in 20s and 30s, we're mostly building up our ego and identity. We're not interested in what we don't do. We're interested in what we can do. And so this particular modality takes a look at the deficiencies or blind spots, and is very deep and intense to recognize what it is that you don't do. And it's not personal. There's only 12 possibilities. You either have it or you don't. But somehow I gave a reading to a lady yesterday, and she's very accomplished. But when we got to the ones she doesn't do, son of a gun, if she said those are the problems, those are the deficiencies, those are her weaknesses, her trying to think of the word, the places that are most painful to her, and there's no bias in the reading, and so I can go right to them based on the native intelligence of the reading of the chart, not of me, but of the chart itself. That somehow, if you don't have a natal planet there, then it's a deficiency. It's something, and it's something that you have to work on in life. It's not a deficiency in your soul, but it's a deficiency in the personality. There are 9 planets in 12 houses, so there's ignorance built into the system.
Mm.
So that's the life reading, is the 3 modalities, and I take at least 3 hours to run through them. It's a slow, intense process of really of aligning people with their higher selves. That the teaching, I've come to realize, it's about alignment. That the learning comes in the process of aligning with the higher self. And then as I said, the rudeness or the low self-esteem, once you realize these things, then you start working on them. And the lady said, well, yeah, I know I do that. I need to, I work on it every day. And I say, well, you need to be aware of it in the moment. You need to not, afterwards slap yourself around. You need to be in the moment, realize as you're saying it or doing it that that isn't what you want to do, that the process is a week later, then a day later, then an hour later, and then 5 minutes later. And then in the moment, as you're doing it, you realize she can feel it in her body. She just has to be present enough to say, that's not what I want to do.
Right. To stop, course correct, and every time you course correct, you're kind of breaking that habit a little bit more,
Yeah,
right?
you're creating new patterns, new neurological pathways, and eventually you get over the hump that living another way feels weird. Living another way than these new ways. That when you become rude again and you say, oh, I don't want to do that. Did I do that again? No,
Right.
I don't. I want to let go of that. I don't want to be that way. And you start recognizing it. You start recognizing people's reactions to your own energy. You recognize people's. You can feel it. When you're. You don't have to be very intuitive to start recognizing when things people are affected by ways that you're being, ways that you're acting.
Mm. Do you think it would be fair to say that the things that are usually the hardest are the ones that we should be working on the most?
Well, yes and no. I think you have to. If you're going to climb to the top of Everest, it might be better for you to start with a smaller mountain. So the hardest things are probably not the first things, and if you use the word should, I want to course correct on that. So there's no shoulds, but I
Right.
think the reality of it is, again, this lady yesterday, she wanted to know, well, what should I do in life? They come to me, every part of her life is falling apart, and she wants to know her next steps. And I say, you want to know your last step? I suggest you work on your next step. You need to know the first step, not the last step. She wanted to go to the last step. And you can't do that. You need to
Mhm.
start with where you're at. You need to take the next step. And so you need to, you need to, if you want to lose weight, maybe you need to go to the gym one time, or you need to, maybe you're not ready to run, but maybe you're ready to walk, and if you start with 10 minutes, that's okay too. So that's a process that will work, to go to your hardest lesson to begin with. Yeah, maybe Buddha, but not the rest of us.
Mm. So you have, how long have you been doing these readings?
I've been doing these. Well, I mean, I played with astrology for forever, but the readings, the professional readings, is now 10 years. That for whatever reason, and I can probably give you some readings, but that my timing was that it took a long time. Yeah, I'll say this, my particular feeling is that if I go ego on it, then I get slapped around. And so I really had to get to a place of letting go of the ego, letting go of I'll be seen or people will like me, which I don't know that those are my stories, but those kinds
Right.
of things. That doing it for me, doing it for my ego, not for me, but doing it for my ego rather than doing as a service,
Right.
as a need to express. When it became a need to express, I like to say when the readings were from me, they weren't as good as through me. And
Oh.
and so I had to get to a place of through me, not from me.
Mhm.
And so it's been about 10 years that I was doing this, the trading. I, I told you that going from uh, buying in these marketplaces all over the world, and then it became a time when I couldn't do that anymore. I didn't have the energy. It wasn't that I'm old, but it wasn't that I was old tired, but I was just ready to do something else. And so I
Mhm.
started doing this. I went into a couple of years of intense study, which wasn't always my way, but of intense study. And then from that, and being in India and sitting with teachers here, um, and they would tell me what I needed to know, you know
Right.
I remember one teacher used a phrase, ordinary people. And then I remember ordinary people became one of my phrases. And I don't even remember how I used it now, but I remember hearing that phrase and sitting with the teachers. Their teachings became, because I couldn't find the words. I had the feelings. I knew what I
Mm,
wanted. I mean, I couldn't describe it, but I could know what it felt like. A little bit like what we were talking about with the traveling to India, that it was something that I could feel and feel um, vibrantly, but to put words on it and to express it, it was just beyond my grasp. Whether it was verbal or even it wasn't physical plane based, and so sitting with the teachers, they gave me their core phrases, which were not even necessarily their phrases. They were mainly. I remember one time I sent to one of these teachers. I sent something that I had written, and I said, "Well, is it okay if I quote you and use your words?" And they said, "Well, I don't recognize these words," because they were
right.
they were like a phrase like uh, uh, living in undisturbed consciousness 24/7. Undisturbed consciousness is Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I heard it from him, but he didn't really relate it to his phrase, his wording or his phrase. And so undisturbed consciousness was a way to describe the sixth house in the wheel of totality. I mean, it just, it wasn't a plan, but somehow um, it synthesized effortlessly that as I was sitting in these classes, which I'd been sitting in for lifetimes, in this life, all of a sudden I started taking notes, which I never did. And then the phrases kind of came up, and they explained they were ways that I would adapt them. And again, the teachers gave me permission to use their words because they didn't see it as their words. They were
Mm,
words through them, but not from them.
right. Wow. Um, so there's location astrology, there's Vedic astrology. Um, so for like simple terms for somebody who's not real familiar with these different types of readings, me being one of them, can you kind of give like a short, sweet kind of like in layman's
Sure.
terms definition?
So location astrology is about the power of place. That there is a that the it's also called astrocartography, and it projects lines onto the planet based on your birth chart.
Mm.
And the teaching says that the lines are intense for you. The neophyte, the newbie, thinks that the lines, that's where I want to go, but the lines are intense, and it's not always best to live on the line. I mean, it could be best. I mean, if you want intensity, well, yeah, that's the place to go. But many people find that where there are no lines is really important to them because it's a quiet. I call it a quiet place. There's no lines there, and you can kind of hear yourself think. It may not be forever. I remember one time I had a young, attractive client, maybe 25 years old, who lived in Amsterdam, Holland, for 3 years and never met anybody. And I'm thinking, how can that be? But she didn't have any lines there. And so it was a very empty place for her. And at 25, she wanted
Mm.
more action. She wanted to meet people, and that wasn't a good place. But you get to middle age, and those no lines are really good because you're really quiet and you can kind of hear yourself think when you're living in a place. So people take a look at the reading is going through their chart and looking at places they've been and finding places that are more helpful for them based on their particular goals and what they're looking for. And
So I saw like diagrams on your website. So like the location astrology means that certain areas on the globe will be like more productive for you in your life than other ones, depending on. where your
Well,
lines are? Am I
they
understanding that
can
right?
be more productive, but they're like ley lines, they're
Mm,
PowerPoints for you. They're not the ley lines of the
right,
earth, which are
right,
universal for everybody, but they're your own ley lines. And the ley lines can be productive, but they can also be non-productive. I like to say, if you're taking a test and your teacher is standing over your shoulder, is that productive or not? Well, it's probably not productive, but it is more
right.
intense. So the art of it is to help people to look at their patterns, to look at where they've been and how it's worked, and then to create a strategy, uh, to synthesize a strategy based on their needs and what they're looking for, is to a place that will be beneficial for them based on what they want in life. Because the 25-year-old wanted the lines, but as a 75-year-old, the lines are not particularly as necessary. I mean, they can be helpful, but not necessarily what you're looking for.
So if they came to get a location astrology reading from you, that
Excuse
would
me.
be like if they want to know what would be a really good place for them to relocate or to move to or something like that.
That's basically the idea. But here's the
Gotcha.
kicker. The kicker is that we bring our baggage with us. Our baggage is our
Right.
natal chart. We create a relocation chart where we are. We cast a chart
Mhm.
based on the moment of birth, changing the time to the local time uh, of your moment of your birth, and this other location, and your planets will stay in the same signs, but the rising sign will change and the houses will change, and so you get a whole new view of your life. But the thing is that for most people, for many people, it's all about the baggage. It's like this place didn't work, and this place didn't work, and place didn't work. What's in common? You. And so then we go back to the life reading, because you need to know what your core triggers are, the Enneagram. You need to know the strengths and weaknesses of your chart, the astrology chart, or the Vedic astrology. And then you need to know, and then maybe some people take the wheel of totality too, to know their blind spots, their places of ignorance. And so then you come to the location and you realize, that it'll never work if I hold on to these opinions of being rude or low self-esteem.
Wow, because I did recently, about 8 months ago, move halfway across the country from where I lived my whole life. So that's why I'm just like, my eyes are wide hearing you say all
Yeah,
this.
well,
It's like,
this is the reading that people do before that, and
yeah,
I will
oops,
tell you,
I do everything
well,
backwards.
I would tell you that most people generally have pretty good intuition about this. Most people don't. Most people move to a good spot. I mean, I'm not saying 100%, but more often, people make okay changes. The reality of it is that some people are born in places that are not very conducive. They may not have particularly positive charts, and it may be that they have particularly difficult lines right there, and so maybe those people think that it's them, and it may not be them. Most often
Mm.
it's them, but there are definitely people that they're really not in a very good spot. It's just a difficult place to be for them. And when they move, like when you go on vacation, so you get away from your home story and your everyday life. But the fact is, you go to a place that has a completely different energy. And we're
Mhm.
not talking 50 miles here. We're talking, hundreds of miles. And generally north to south isn't the change. It's more east to west. And when you go halfway across the country, you're going to have a completely different set of circumstances generally. And in that, you get a whole new point of view. You create a new you. You go to Hawaii and it's a new you. Well, why is that? Well, because the lines are completely different and your chart is completely different. And all of a sudden, your 12th house son, I can't find myself, and I'm disconnected from myself, and now your son moves into your 10th house and everybody sees you, or your first house and and you light up yourself, or 7th house and you're very sociable with other people. Whatever it is, you have a completely different perspective, and it's a way to, it's like a reincarnation. You get a new sense of yourself, because everything changes, all the planets move to a different house, and when you go halfway around, not halfway around the country, but halfway around the world, then you have an opposite chart, and
Ooh.
it's really important. I had a client recently who had he had only had planets in 4 houses, and they were across from each other. So he's basically working in 2 spines. You know what I mean? He's got 8 houses empty, and across from those 8 houses are empty houses. And any house he has planets, which are only 4, across from them are planets, and they're next to each other. And so I suggested to him
Ooh.
that he really needed to, move a third of the way around the world twice, to be able to because he's got these whole 8 planets that his girlfriend maybe helps him to see, but that he's living in a very, that particular chart. I'm not going to say him, but that particular chart, you really know what you know, but you have absolutely no idea about what you don't know.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and so by going a third of the way around the world, he has the ability to be able to then move his planets into completely new houses, which he experiences a different part of life. So what does that look like? It looks like you're COVID, you work from home. It's a completely different way of looking at life. You're still working, but you're working at home. You're married for a long time, and then you're single. You don't have kids, and then you have kids, even, or marry and get stepkids. And you didn't have any kids. So it's a new way of looking at life, and you have totally new experiences. And this is the same idea, that by going a third of the way around the world, he has a chance to experience, not that he has to live there, but that I suggested, my thinking was even 6 months, to be able to, or 3 months, to be able to be in a different place in the world, to scratch your back, in different
Mhm.
areas, that you can scratch what you can reach, but here's a way to scratch what you can't reach. It can be very helpful to your own growth and your own understanding. People can be very limited in their thinking and very limited in their outlook, because they're only living in a very restricted way based on the planetary configuration.
Right. So, how would you describe Vedic? Is that how you say it?
Okay.
Vedic?
Yeah.
Vedic astrology. How would you describe that?
Um,
Is that the one with a like a diamond? I was looking at the different diagrams on your website there. It was like really interesting.
Vedic astrology is the astrology of India. The astrology itself isn't really much different. We don't use, in Vedic astrology, we don't use the outer planets. Uh, there are a few differences, but basically it's the same. The real kick is that the chart is cast slightly differently. Okay, the Western chart is cast with tropical time, and the idea here is it's the relationship between the sun and the earth, sun and the earth, and that's the seasons. And so March 21st is Aries 0 every year. But the
Mhm.
reality of it, in Vedic astrology, we take into account the earth, and then the sun, and then the sky behind the sun. Okay. And so the sky behind the sun is different every year, because the sun is moving in the solar system, in the universe. And so it's on a 26,000 year cycle called the precession of the equinox. And
Mhm.
so the two systems were the same around 400 AD. We're now 72 years, 1 degree. we're now 24 degrees different. And so the chart is cast 24 degrees backward. And so if you have 24 degrees or less Leo, you're now a Cancer.
Yeah, I was just hearing something about this recently.
And so it's a little mind-boggling for people. I like to think of it as is that who you are and what you wear at the office is completely different than who you are and what you wear at church, with your family out for Thanksgiving, and with your buddies going out on the town. So
Right.
or on vacation with your family. And
Mhm.
so it's a different aspect of ourselves. There is truth in all of them. But I believe that the Vedic chart is more geared towards spirituality. It's more sensitive to the positions that are holding you back spiritually. Western astrology is more mundane. It's more worldly it's more worldly affected.
Mm,
And that isn't really the kind of astrology that I do. So that particular chart, while it has value, and somehow they find the same things. I'll say something about
yeah.
your Jupiter is cuspy, and they'll say, oh well, in my Western chart it's this, it's aspected this, da, 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 and they'll come up with the same thing. To me, they're kind of speaking Greek. I mean, it's like a completely left field kind of a way, but somehow they come up with the same things. I think that's the beauty of astrology. And I'll even go so
It's
far
kind
as
of
that
like
I believe
math.
that
There's only one
kind of
correct
like
answer.
math. Yeah,
Kind of like math. You can go different
yeah,
ways and arrive at the same answer,
yeah,
but it's always going to
yeah,
be one
absolutely,
correct.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that the thing is that you can get in math, you can get to the wrong answer and still learn. And in astrology, you can even sometimes you'll cast the wrong chart. I thought you said the 12th, but it was the 13th,
Mhm.
or was it AM or PM? And so you start reading the wrong chart, and people are going, yeah, yeah, right, yeah, I see, yeah, and it's the wrong chart, and how is that? How is that? Um, I think it's just there's a universal truth in astrology that somehow, even if you do the wrong chart, I believe that we're giving them something that they need to hear. That's something that's important to them to hear, even if it isn't the right chart.
But maybe we have a
You
little bit of
understand?
everything, but just more so a lot of different things depending on your chart. Maybe like we have a little tiny bit of the things that aren't in our chart, but we have a lot of the things that are in our chart. Did I explain that right? It was just a guess anyway. Like that might explain why when you get their chart wrong, they'll say, "Yeah, yeah, that sounds like me a little bit." And the Navamsha reading, what is that
Navamsha.
about? Navamsha.
So Navamsha. So I like to call the Navamsha the crown jewel of readings. Okay. So
Oh,
the Navamsha in Vedic astrology, well, in Western astrology too, there are divisional charts. And how you create a divisional chart is that you divide the chart by a number. And I can't exactly explain how they do that. But if you divide a chart by 2, then all the positions, for example, and I'm not exactly sure this is how they do it. And of course, Western and Vedic do it differently. But let's say that a planet is at 20 degrees, that maybe if you divide it by 2, then that's 10 degrees. Maybe if there's a 360 degrees in the whole chart. So maybe if you're like Taurus is the second sign, so that would be degree 31 through 60. So maybe if you divide it by 2, then it moves into Aries. However they do it, if you divide it by the division by 9 is the Navamsha chart. And it's said to be the spouse chart. I knew about it for 25 years, but I wasn't really interested in the spouse chart. And then I don't even remember. I think I read in a book that I don't even remember what I read, but all of a sudden it appeared to me, which is the way that it works for me, is that it's not the spouse you marry, but it's the perfect spouse. And who is our perfect spouse? It is us at our highest. And so the Navamsha chart is who we become. And I like to say that we have strengths and weaknesses in our chart. When we overcome the deficiencies in the wheel of totality, then we become in our 60s. It doesn't really take effect until our 60s. It's who we become. And if you get the reading before 60, the value is to help you to know the forks in the road.
Wow. I like that one. Is that a really long one? I know that your shortest reading's like
Actually,
an
one
hour.
of the shorter ones.
Oh, okay. And how about the relationship reading?
Well, relationship reading is where you compare people. I mean, you don't compare people. You compare charts. You talk about their Enneagram points, and you compare their particular stories. You give them feedback based on by the strengths and weaknesses of their relationship. It's not that we're looking for. The fact is that you want a little tension in your charts, because if you don't have any tension, then there's no growth. That may work
Right.
for 20 minutes, but that may not work for 50 years. It may work for 50 years, but most people want a little bit of tension in their chart. And so in the relationship reading, I will do a lot of comparisons, including the wheel of totality. Like I said, this guy that had the 4, I said that his girlfriend, she's got some planets and houses that he doesn't have, and that is a learning experience. He broadens in that experience, that she has she has some of the same, but she also has some that are different, and in that he has a chance to broaden out into her unconsciously. He has a chance to learn about himself through her, and so in a relationship chart we just compare these situations. We give the feedback of these situations, neither good nor bad. It just is. And I can give them the particular challenges. I can find places of strength and places of weakness, and I can even predict future changes based on not that I work with the future much, but the Mahadashas, the timing feature that I do, the periods that you're in. There are, there's a time in Vedic astrology is a teaching that each planet has a time in your life when it's your most important planet. And so you can see that people are both in very active planetary periods like Jupiter and Mars. But for the Jupiter one, they're going to go into Saturn next, and one's going to be in Mars, which is going to be bouncing off the walls, and the other one's going to be in Saturn, which wants to be in a cave and doesn't want to go anywhere. And so it can be kind of handy to realize that that's coming up.
One of my best friends, that happened to one of my best friends. All of a
Her
sudden, her
mate
husband
changed.
yes. And he
Yeah,
didn't want to go anywhere. He didn't want to
that's
leave the house all
planetary
of a sudden
periods.
anymore.
So you may ask me about the family dynamic readings, and so that's where I just apply this to family, that I can go through, whoever it is. It can be old boyfriends, it can be mother, father, it can be siblings, it can be bosses. I don't know that I've done bosses, but it can be anybody. It's a family dynamic and we take this same thing through, that it can be really helpful to understand why don't they like me? Why why do I always have difficulty with Uncle George? Or I had a client that has a brother that has an incredible amount of tension with the brother, and we went through the husband, and then we went to the mother, and then we went to the brother in order to understand what's going on, and there's a lot of value in that for people.
Yeah, that would really come in handy, because I was going to ask you about the relationship reading if it
Yes.
was mainly romantic relationships.
Well,
Yeah.
the relationship reading can be anybody, but mostly it's it would be your partner. But that relationship reading can also be can be a kid. I didn't mention that, but can be your kid. I remember telling one client that strong personality, but she had this one. I think it was her oldest. Usually, it's the oldest who's just like, she just doesn't grok with, just doesn't understand. And it turned out to be that I told her she's your teacher, she's your teacher, and she said absolutely, and she had
Yeah.
I taught her to have I don't want to say taught, but I said it opened her even more to the reality that she has to basically let go of her expectations. The
I
bossing this
just
kid around
remembered.
isn't
What
going to
was that?
work. I saying bossing this kid around is just not going to work.
Right. That's me. That's me. I just remembered while you were saying that's what she was saying this morning in the podcast that I was watching about Uranus. The planet Uranus is like just not going to go with the program. You cannot force them to do anything. They will push back, continuously push back. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like me. But yeah,
That
wow.
you're a pusher. That you're pushed back.
Yeah, I was like that. I was the oldest, and I was like, could not be for, like, you can't tell me I have to do something because it's going to make me want to do the opposite or not want to do
Yes.
it. Right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
Like that kind of thing. Um, what about a childhood reading? Does that like,
A childhood reading. I worked with I had a lady join me in readings here in India one year, and she was really good. She didn't actually know any of it, but she was a sharp lady, and she picked it up rather quickly. And she really liked to go into childhood stuff. And so, a childhood reading is more about going into the through the Mahadasha periods to uncover the stories of childhood, bring them into the present moment, and it's just focused on the childhood that you can see. I can go back to that childhood period and reawaken in them some of their experiences in order to kind of move forward, relearned.
hmm. Yeah, I was like, I loved being a mother. I kind of went through this little kind of depression when when I started getting real close to being an empty nester. But yeah, kids are like the purest form of humanity. Like they're just untainted by
I
like.
know. I know. I had a friend told me a story one time that they hadn't even landed and they already got sick on the plane, landing in India. So India is always going to be a test that you
Is that a
just have
really
to.
good line for you on the location astrology?
Yes, this is actually a very good place for me. It's a
Mhm.
it's opposite for me, and it brings my cuspy
Mm.
seventh house sun into the first house, and so I self-express more here than I do. It's easier for me to self-express here than other places, and of course, then I'm able to apply it everywhere. But yeah, this has always
Nice.
been this place I come to is a place where seekers have been coming here for thousands of years, so it's not new. This is where the Beatles
Right.
came. I'm in
Yeah.
Rishikesh, so for
So
me it is a good place for me to come to.
so how about the spiritual progress one?
Okay, so the spiritual progress one is a combination of ones we've already talked about. Okay, it was the Wheel of Totality and the Navamsha, and then I added the Enneagram because people needed to know who they were in they needed to ground in who they were in order to understand their deficiencies better, and then their Navamsha chart. So it's basically a combination of those three readings. Um,
Okay. So that one takes a little bit to do?
um, it's not incredibly long. I don't do the Enneagram. The life reading Enneagram is a little bit longer than a little bit more detailed. So
Yeah.
this spiritual progress reading, I found that I really needed to ground them in who they were. That it's not me. I felt that there was a lack in the reading, and by including the Enneagram in this reading, I found that it hit even better for them to be grounded in themselves in order then to be able to look at to take in the spiritual progress of their deficiencies, and then their Nirvamsha chart, who they become.
So now comes the fun parts. Do you want to do a little short mini reading on me?
Okay, so what I was thinking here is the Enneagram. Let me explain the Enneagram. So there are 9 points. Okay, we give them. They all have names, but we use numbers, and there's no hierarchy in the numbers. 8 isn't better than 4. They're numbered 1 through 9. Okay, so the teaching is that there are 3 instincts, 3 core instincts. That's anger, fear, and emotion. Okay, there are 3. We have all 3 of them in us, but one of them is at our core. There are 3 reactions to energy coming toward us. There are those that go outward to it. Those people are more extroverted in nature. There are those that pull back from energy. They're more introverted in nature. And the third of the triad is we call neutral. It's an active neutral strategy of observing before behavior. Anger is outwardly directed. Fear is inwardly directed. And the neutral spot in between is to observe what's going on before you move. Okay? So 3 reactions to behavior times 3 core instincts gives us 9 unique energetic Enneagram vibrational signatures. Okay. So the question is, at your core, and sometimes we go back to your childhood or early teens or early 20s, because I want compulsion. I don't want that I want to know what the compulsions are. So we go back to early 20s or teens. So at that core, were you anger? We used to talk about 9/11. We'd say the anger types got angry, the fear types got afraid, and the image types, or the emotion-bodied people, they thought that they caused it. So at your core, when you get triggered, is there anger? Is there fear? Or is this image or emotion or feeling, looking to other people in order to see how you should respond? And so are you inward focused, outward focused, or are you more neutral, that you observe before behavior?
I would say emotion. Yeah. Let's go back to that. I would say emotion, because I would only react with anger if
When you're
I,
triggered.
right. But
Yes.
my initial knee jerk reaction was always like love and happiness and giggly and like just, yeah,
Okay.
too
So
true.
outwardly focused, inwardly focused, or more neutrally focused?
Outwardly, definitely.
Okay, so the outward emotion is the 2. Okay, so the 8, 9, and 1s are anger. The inward is the outward is the 8. They're the boss. The neutral is the 9, who's the peacemaker, and the inward anger is called the perfectionist. The emotion type are 2, 3, and 4. The 2 is the outward, is called the helper, and I'll get back to you in a minute. The 3 is the neutral, is the producer, and the 4 inward is called the individualist. And then fear is 5, 6, and 7. 5 is the inward; they are the observer that want to know how everything works. The 6 is the loyalist, who is the big doubter, and 7 is the enthusiast. That's me. That's the outward fear. So the 2 is the helper. They help other people. They compulsively help other people. They do that because they don't feel worthy of love, and so they create codependent relationships in order to get that love that they don't feel that they're worthy of within them. They have the 2, 3s, and 4s live in shame because of not worthiness. But the 2 has the double prong of pride and shame. The pride is a moral superiority, that I am better, even though they don't feel better, but that I am better is a way to create the positive outlook group. 2, 7, and 9, that's you and me. We're both positive outlook group. That's the joy and the love. And we also have that we go to stress, we go to another number. So in stress, you go to 8, where you become angry and assertive and bossy. 2s are more authentic. at 8, because as a 2, you would never tell anybody what you actually feel.
Right.
Okay, but at 2, you can't hold it back anymore. And then in relaxation, you go to 4, where I say that you become more sensitive and more creative. And I like to say that's when you pull out the craft projects.
Where I pull out the what?
Craft projects.
Yes.
Yeah, at 4
Yes.
in relaxation.
Like the thumbnails for this podcast, for example. They're really busy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the idea here is that everybody has a stress place that's separate from their own place, and they have a different relaxation, and all 2s go to 8, and all 2s go to 4 in relaxation, and 3s go to 9 in stress, and 6 in relaxation, and 7s go to 1 in stress, and 5 in relaxation, all of them. And so we all have this incredible amount of patterning. There can be some uniqueness in it, but the patterning isn't meant to box you in. It's there to help you to see it in order for you to get out of the box that you're in. That the idea here is that you're always going to want to help other people, but you're not going to have a compulsion and obsession around it. That's the idea, is to get rid of the compulsions and obsessions around these particular behaviors. The behaviors are fine. It's the motivation behind them that needs to be cleaned up a bit.
That's probably why I was the kind of mom that I was, because I always kind of had this feeling in the back of my mind that I'm saying feeling in my mind, right? But I always had
Yeah.
this
Well,
feeling or
that's
this
your
thought.
emotional body. So that's that's actually correct English.
Right, right. So I always felt like I was trying to show my parents how they should have been towards
Moral
us, and that's
superiority.
how I was to my kids. I was very loving and I doted on them and I protected them fiercely and all the stuff that I didn't and I heard that recently too. Somebody was saying a lot of times we try to correct what wasn't done for us for through our children, right?
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. And
But the problem is that we tend to course correct too much. If we want to find center, we need to move over a little bit. We tend to go from one extreme to the other, and then that's the conditioning we pass down. And so the way out is, I believe, is to understand the core triggers of your Enneagram story, to realize that there's a hook on your taking care of other people, and when you let go of the hook, then and it's exhausting
to let
for you
go
to
of the
take care.
hooker.
No, it's exhausting to take care of other people. And when you let go of the hook of needing to take care of other people, then you can be more relaxed, and you can and it's wonderful for 2s to be able to just not compulsively clean the kitchen, or call Sally, or be there. I'm dead tired. You get home, I'm dead tired. I'm never moving. The phone rings. Sally, it's a
Yeah.
problem. Okay, I'll be right there. To be able to let
Right.
go of that is really helpful. And so when you become an empty nester, which you just said
Mhm.
further back in the podcast, of course it cuts you at your core, because that's how you create your identity, is by taking care of other people, and now you don't have anybody to take care of. Well, you have
Well,
yourself. That's what you should be
what's
doing, is taking
crazy?
care of yourself.
Yeah, I'm like that with the animals. Like, I can't see an animal that's hurt or an animal that's hungry and like not feed it. Like, I'm feeding the birds. I'm feeding. My cat brings a stray cat home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you poor little thing. You must be so hungry. Let me feed you.
And
So
again, let me repeat, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you do it out of compulsion, because then I'm a good person, because the 2 is a compliant, needs to be of service to other people, do the right thing, internal rules. So I ask them, how do you know what the right thing is? And the
yeah.
answer is, they make it up, and it's changeable. There is no
Oh.
right thing.
Oh.
It's this compliant within yourself that you want to be the good girl. So I need to be compliant to these rules in my head. I suggest you let go of those rules. I don't have any of the rules.
Yeah.
I'm not a 2. 1 or a 6. Those are the compliant types. I'm not those.
Well, if I'm feeding the animals and everybody's saying, "Well, why are you doing that? Don't do that. They're going to keep coming around here," but I still want to feed the animal anyway. That's not being compliant, is it? Or is it?
Well, I think that you need to answer that yourself. I can't tell you, but if you're doing it because you want to be a good person, that is compliant.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think when you
Intention is
start looking for
everything.
animals to feed, then you're a little over the top.
Right. Right. I first started feeding the birds to entertain my cat because that's how I take care of
Yes,
things. I make sure
there you
every
go.
single need is taken care of.
There you go. Okay. I think if you get into it and you read about it, you will start and you see anybody out there. There's a thing called panels, panels. So if you
Mhm.
Google Enneagram 2 panels, you'll see about 4 or 5 twos talking about it. And it's going to be a tearjerker, when you see how
Oh,
compulsive these motivations are, these activities are, then you're gonna let go of some of your compulsion.
yeah. I'm gonna do that too. This is like so wild. I thought I knew a little bit about everything, but this is one thing I didn't know anything about. All these different kinds of rings. This is like wow. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
And
Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, I'm gonna let folks see if they would like to get a reading from you. This is where they can go. Check out Indra's website right there. And I want to ask you 2 questions that I ask all my guests at the end.
Okay.
And the first one is, what is the meaning of life according to Indra?
The meaning of life.
Mhm.
Sometimes they ask me the secret of life. The meaning of life. I'm not sure that life has a meaning other than living,
Okay,
being,
what's the secret?
experience. The secret of life is the I don't want to change your question. The God says to Mrs. God, where should I put the secret of life? Mrs. God says, put it in their heart. They'll never find it there. The secret of life is to love.
Oh.
And I don't know that there's any meaning. I think the ego wants meaning. I don't know that there's any meaning. The meaning is to grow and to create. And I mean, I don't mean to paint, but I mean just to experience. The thing is that what does this plane of existence have that no other plane has? It's density. And so I
Yes.
like to say that you're in heaven and your mentor or God says to you, you need to let go of jealousy. And you say, I'm in heaven. I don't feel any jealousy. Okay. Flash forward now, you're in a body and your ex-partner is now walking away from you, holding the hand of your best friend. Now you've got a feeling of jealousy that you're going to get it, that you can't get
Mhm.
anywhere else. And so
Right.
I don't want to call that meaning. I want to call that it's just that it's all the same. That whether we're in heaven or any of the astral spheres, even spheres, and even the higher spheres, that the purpose is to just grow and experience. That they say that why was man, not man invented, but why was uh, uh, um, existence created is because man wanted to experience, as God wanted to experience
I
himself.
heard this the other day. He's limited, he's limitless, and he wanted to experience limitations through
That's
us.
it. And
Yeah.
that's the meaning. The meaning is to experience. And more than that, I think is kind of BS. I mean, I think that's just
Yeah.
ego. That's just man wanting to find a purpose. I was supposed to, cross the country. I was supposed to build the transcontinental train. I said to this lady yesterday, you can be a math scholar, but you can use it you can be Einstein, you could be a college professor, or you could be a elementary school math teacher, or you could be a CFO, or you could be an astrologer. It's still math, but there is not
Mhm.
necessarily one particular path in terms of that mathiness. And it may be that in Einstein's next life he doesn't know math at all. He's the
Right.
English major and not the math major. And so
I heard in an NDE that you can't get this wrong.
absolutely, there
He
is
was
no
told,
right
"You
or
can't get
wrong.
it wrong. You
There are
can't get
no
it wrong."
mistakes.
There are no mistakes is exactly what he was told. There are no mistakes. You can't get this wrong. I was like, wow. So hearing you say that just kind of jogged my memory with that. And the second question is, if you could leave, we kind of did cover this many times, but if you could leave our listeners with one piece of profound advice, potentially life changing, what would that be?
Well, I usually say love yourself. And as a two,
Yeah.
that's probably the best thing to say.
Yes.
to
Yes.
leave you with that, not your
And if we're
listeners,
all
but
connected
you.
and you love yourself, you're loving everyone, you're loving God, you know.
That's it, is you got to love
Mhm.
yourself. That's a place to start. Everybody wants to start outside.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to correct everything outside them, and then I can start working on me. But that's kind of backwards.
Yeah. So, also, if you would like to reach out to Indra, here are his socials. All the links are in the description in the show notes, and you'll be able to just go in the show notes and just click right on them.
I
So,
want to leave your listeners with two gifts, free gifts, if I
oh,
may.
okay, sure.
Okay. So the two free gifts that I have for your listeners are that if you email me and I will give you your Vedic astrology chart for free. It's not a reading. I may make a comment or two, but I will send you your chart if you're interested. I need your birth time, date, and place. Email me at not there's no email there, but at the email address. I don't know where it is, but on one of your
You can
things.
say it, but I'll put it in the description notes.
Indra Rinzler at gmail.com. Pretty easy.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything is Indra Rinzler. Why get complicated? Um, and the other one is the Enneagram test. I'll send you a free Enneagram test to give you the opportunity to explore your Enneagram. I really suggest that this is an incredible technique. Changed my life 25 years ago. Still changing it, I suppose, in its
Mhm.
own way. And I'll give you the test so that you can learn about it, to give you a start on learning about that for yourself.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so sweet. Thank you. And then if they do email you and get those tests, then they could get a reading, a deep reading of the charts.
Absolutely. That's happy to give. That's what I'm here for, is to give these readings.
All right.
Not my
Thank
meaning, but it's what I do.
right. Thank you so much, Endra. I really appreciate you coming. I know it's what I don't know how early it is over there.
Well,
Like,
it's not so early. It was 8 a.m. when we started. Not so bad.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and hang back
Yeah.
afterwards and we'll have a little chat before we part ways. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.